The Willowbrook Estates Community Center had never seen anything like it. What should have been a routine monthly HOA meeting had transformed into something resembling a courtroom drama, with Karen Pemberton serving as prosecutor, judge, and jury all rolled into one perfectly coordinated outfit. She'd arrived 30 minutes early, setting up a presentation station with a laptop, projector, and enough printed evidence to wallpaper a small house. The usual crowd of 12 residents had swelled to nearly 60, word having spread through the neighborhood like wildfire about Karen's big reveal. Before we begin with regular business, Karen announced, standing at the front of the room before HOA President Robert Steinberg could even call the meeting to order, "I have some information that I believe will be of interest to everyone here." Steinberg, a balding man in his 50s, who always wore the same navy blazer to meetings, looked like he'd swallowed a golf ball. "Mrs. Pemberton, we haven't opened the floor for." "Actually, it's Ms. Pemberton now," Karen corrected smoothly, clicking to her first slide. "And I think you'll want to hear this, Bob." "Everyone will." The room erupted in murmurs as Karen's first slide appeared on the wall, a side-by-side comparison of pool approval timelines, with married couples in green and single applicants in red. The pattern was unmistakable. "This is highly irregular," Steinberg protested, but his voice lacked conviction. "You know what's irregular, Bob? Approving construction permits for pools that were already built." Karen clicked to the next slide, showing the Henderson's pool with its July 15th date stamp. "Would you like to explain to the community how your board approved a pool on July 20th that was already hosting a pool party 5 days earlier?" The Hendersons, sitting in the third row, looked like they wanted to disappear into their folding chairs. Mrs. Henderson grabbed her husband's arm, whispering urgently. "Furthermore," Karen continued, her voice gaining strength as she watched Steinberg's face pale, "I think everyone should know about the interesting family connection between our HOA president and Aqua Dreams Pool Company. Bob, would you like to tell everyone about your brother-in-law's business, or shall I?" That's when things got interesting. Steinberg shot to his feet, his face flushed red. "You have no right to make these accusations. This is harassment. This is transparency." Karen shot back, something this community has been lacking for far too long. The room exploded into chaos. Neighbors turned to each other, voices rising in anger and confusion. Someone shouted about getting lawyers involved. Mrs. Chen from Maple Street demanded to know if her deck permit denial was part of the same pattern. Karen stood in the center of the storm, watching her carefully constructed case unfold exactly as she'd planned. But as she looked around the room, at the Hendersons' panicked faces, at Steinberg's obvious guilt, at her neighbor's mix of outrage and fear, something unexpected happened. She felt empty. The victory she'd imagined, the vindication she'd craved, tasted like ash in her mouth. This wasn't justice. This was just another kind of destruction, another pool deck demolished with a sledgehammer. "I want my pool back," she said quietly. But somehow her voice carried over the chaos. "That's all I ever wanted. A place to swim laps in the morning, to sit by the water with a book in the evening. I wanted to belong somewhere." The room gradually quieted, all eyes on her. "I'll be filing a formal complaint with the State Attorney General's office tomorrow," she continued. "Not because I want to destroy this community, but because I want it to be better. I want it to be fair." She began packing up her evidence, ignoring the continued murmurs around her. As she reached the door, she turned back one last time. "By the way, Bob," she called out, "my lawyer says I can rebuild my pool immediately, since your board's actions constitute harassment under state law. Construction starts Monday." As she walked out into the cool evening air, Karen felt something she hadn't experienced in months: peace. But as she reached her car, her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Very impressive presentation tonight. We should talk. A friend." She stared at the message, her heart rate picking up again. In the glow of the streetlight, she could see a figure standing in the shadows near the community center, watching her. Karen Pemberton had won her war, but apparently, someone else was just getting started. The sledgehammer came down with a thunderous crack at 6:47 a.m. on a Tuesday morning, sending chunks of concrete flying across Karen Pemberton's pristine backyard. Her neighbors' coffee cups rattled on their kitchen tables as she swung again, her perfectly curled blonde hair bouncing with each violent strike against what used to be her $20,000 pool deck. "Take that, you covenant-violating piece of garbage," she screamed at the concrete, her voice carrying across the entire Willowbrook Estates subdivision. 3 hours earlier, Karen had discovered the letter, not just any letter, a cease and desist order from the Willowbrook HOA board, demanding she remove her unauthorized aquatic structure within 30 days or face daily fines of $500. The pool she'd installed 6 months ago, the one she'd researched for weeks, the one that had cost her marriage when Derek called it her midlife crisis monument, apparently violated subsection 4.72 of the community guidelines. "Ma'am, you might want to," her neighbor Ted started, peering over the fence with concern etched across his weathered face. "Don't you mind me, Theodore?" Karen whirled around, sledgehammer still in hand. "This is all your fault anyway. You and your little HOA spy network, reporting every blade of grass that grows too tall." Ted backed away, hands raised. "I didn't report anything, Karen, I swear." But Karen wasn't listening. The rage that had been building since her divorce 6 months ago, since she'd lost the house in Meadowbrook to Derek and his 25-year-old yoga instructor, had finally found its target. She'd moved to Willowbrook to start fresh, to build something beautiful, something that was entirely hers. And now they wanted to take that away too. She pulled out her phone and dialed with shaking fingers. "Margaret, it's Karen." "Yes, I know it's early. Listen, I need you to look up everything, and I mean everything, about HOA regulations for swimming pools. I don't care if it takes all day. Someone made a mistake, and I'm going to prove it." Margaret Hendricks, her real estate attorney and college roommate, sighed audibly through the phone. "Karen, honey, what did you do?" "I'm exercising my property rights," Karen declared, taking another swing at the pool deck. "And when I'm done, this HOA is going to wish they'd never messed with Karen Pemberton." By noon, the pool was a crater of broken concrete and twisted metal. Karen stood in the center of the destruction, surveying her work with grim satisfaction. Her manicured nails were chipped, her yoga pants were covered in dust, and her neighbors were whispering behind their curtains. But she wasn't done. Not by a long shot. 2 weeks later, Karen's dining room looked like a conspiracy theorist's dream. Charts covered every wall, showing property lines, HOA board member connections, and a timeline of every pool installation in Willowbrook Estates dating back to 2018. Red string connected photos of swimming pools to their approval dates, creating a web of evidence that would make any detective proud. "You've lost your mind," Margaret said, standing in the doorway with 2 cups of coffee and a look of deep concern. This is not healthy, Karen." Karen looked up from her laptop, her hair pulled back in a messy bun, reading glasses perched on her nose. "I'm not crazy, Maggie. Look at this." She pointed to a blown-up photo of the Hendersons' pool 3 streets over. They installed their pool in March. Same size as mine, same contractor, same everything. But they got approval in 2 days. 2 days. Maybe they followed the proper procedures. "I did follow the proper procedures." Karen's voice cracked slightly. "I submitted my application in triplicate. I attended every HOA meeting for 3 months. I even brought those ridiculous sugar cookies to butter up the board members. And for what? So they could approve the Hendersons' pool in 48 hours while mine sat in review for 16 weeks. Margaret sat down carefully, avoiding the stacks of papers. "What exactly are you trying to prove here?" Karen's eyes lit up with the fervor of someone who'd found her calling. "Corruption, favoritism, systematic discrimination against single women in this community." She pulled up a spreadsheet on her laptop. "Look at this data. In the past 2 years, every pool application from a married couple was approved within a week. Every application from a single person denied or delayed indefinitely." "Karen, correlation doesn't equal causation. I know. But 23 cases? That's not a coincidence. That's a pattern." Karen stood up, pacing between her evidence boards. And you know what the cherry on top is? The HOA president, Robert Steinberg. His brother-in-law owns Aquadreams Pool Company. Guess who installed every single one of those quickie-approved pools? Margaret's coffee cup paused halfway to her lips. That actually sounds problematic. Problematic. Karen laughed bitterly. It's fraud. It's corruption. She stopped mid-sentence, staring at a photo on her timeline. Oh my God. What? Karen grabbed a magnifying glass. When had she bought a magnifying glass? And examined the photo more closely. The Henderson's pool. Look at the date stamp on this photo from their social media. She thrust the magnifying glass at Margaret. July 15th. But their approval letter is dated July 20th. Margaret squinted at the photo. Maybe they made a mistake. They built their pool 5 days before getting approval. Karen's voice was barely a whisper. They all did. Every single one of them. They knew they'd get approved, so they started construction before the paperwork was even processed. The room fell silent except for the hum of Karen's laptop. Margaret set down her coffee with a clink that seemed to echo in the sudden quiet. So what now? Margaret asked. Karen turned to face her, and for the first time in months, she was smiling. Now we go to war.